So we have about 20 minutes, and we'll open it up to Q&A. We have 2 mics, one on each aisle. So if you could come up and ask the question into the mic. Is it on? Testing. Oh, it's
Here
on.
we go. Hi. My name is Doru. I'm from Paradox Interactive over in Sweden. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really love the game. Just a question. I know you're in no position to share, any numbers or any of the not so sexy budget stuff. But I am curious, assuming the return on investment for a project such as this one is better than for a very, very large project such as Resident Evil 6, what does that mean not only for this franchise, but for maybe all of Capcom's franchises going forward?
So you're right. I am unable to share any numbers or figures here. However, one thing to keep in mind for RE7 is that sort of inclusive of the engine development cost is what we're looking at. And so it's hard to compare. It's like comparing apples and oranges. So it's hard to say. But the development cost, you're right, it was a lot more sort of compact in the sense of if you compare it just purely numbers, 7 versus 6.
I can add to that. I mean, as I said in the presentation as well, I mean, we tried to be as efficient as possible, so we tried to keep things within the budget that we were given.
Here's your answer.
Thank you.
Hi. I just have one quick question and one a little longer question. But the first one is, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre an influence at all? Because I see quite a bit of that in the early parts of the game anyway.
So first and foremost, you saw on the slide too, but I guess if we were to call out like the main vision or motif goal that we went for is Evil Dead, but that doesn't mean that that was the only reference material that we went by. So obviously Texas Chainsaw Massacre and everything else that you can really think of, there's a whole sort of wide variety of elements that we pulled inspiration and influence from. We're huge fans, period. So there's a lot of influences. So to add to that, that whole table dining scene, the first video or the first scene that I showed and shared with my friend, my team, is from Long Turn, and we referenced a lot of very similar scenes from a wide variety of film and probably non-film references. And it doesn't have to be anything that's from modern days. Everything, old, new, from east and west. But the very first scene that we showed to the team was from that.
Yeah, it was really the table scene that made me think of it. But sorry, the real question I wanted to ask was, so I didn't mean for that to be such a thing. But I was just curious, was VR always part of the plan? And if not, because I know you made a comment about you just had to keep the schedule and didn't want to ship late. So I was just wondering if VR was in the plan early, and if it wasn't, how did you manage to get that in without the schedule changing?
So yeah, when we got the kind of the mandate from Takeuchi, I thought in an instant, like, okay, this is meant for VR. It would be the perfect fit. But in reality, when we started really working on VR, it wasn't until a little bit into the development period.
Yeah, in the original design doc, he had included VR as well,
That's right.
but it wasn't necessary. We didn't actually start building it out immediately.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I know.
I see, sorry, I do see people lined up on this side too, so let's take one from that side.
Okay, first off, I'd like to say that I really enjoyed this game. It was really nice to play a Resident Evil game again that really encapsulated the horror that the genre and game series has been trying to keep alive. And you mentioned how like they kind of progress into like a sequential order, like 1 through 3 is the third person, and then 4 through 6 is more action-oriented. Are you planning on going with that approach with Resident Evil from this point on as well? Or like, is there going to be 8 and 9 following 7's approach, or are you up in the air about that right now?
So yeah, it was in the slide, and prior to 7, we can sort of group them into 3s. However, with this genre of survival horror, mystery and suspense is key, which means who knows what's going to happen. Okay.
Okay, I have two questions. One is for the VR mode. They use a sort of locomotion which is continuous locomotion, and up to now, many games that used this type of locomotion, people got sick. So did you try out also other types of locomotion with teleports and so on? And when was it that you were safe that this type of locomotion didn't make people sick?
So the very first time we showed off VR mode in semi-public trade was last year's E3. And we came in with a good amount of confidence to E3, but the result was that we did hear a lot of people who, said that they got sick. And so we did have some negative feedback. And so really, it was only after post E3 that we really started looking into how we can improve and make it better. We also got advice, a very important and valuable advice from the Sony team, and worked very hard. They encouraged us to do better, and that we can do better. So, and then prior to sort of mastering up our pre-release, we did a lot of user testing within the company. Several of our staff and personnel had tested the game too, and I feel bad because I know that some people really got sick. It is a test, so a lot of people probably were in for a little bit of a surprise, but that's when we started tweaking and fine-tuning and a lot of trial and error, and really got to find the right kind of zone where we landed.
And second question is, you said part 7 would be more suspenseful and scary, and the first half of the game really is, but the second half is more action-oriented. The final is very much gunfights and so on. Was that a compromise to don't set off the fans so much, or was it planned, or would you do it otherwise, taking it the scary way and the slow way all the way to the end the next time?
So it's fair to say that even ourselves, now post-release, we can perhaps view it in that manner too. So I don't disagree with that. However, from a level design perspective, the aim that we had there was that, in the first half of the game, you're now solving mysteries. You're finding out more, right? And so towards the end of, or the latter half, is that now that you're stronger and you have a lot more of these mysteries solved and you've uncovered all this, that you can take an approach of maybe, trying to be in a position where you can go out and really defeat the characters, defeat the enemies. So that was really more the intent, that you uncover, but then towards the, as you progress in the game, that you would use that to your strength.
Thank you.
Hi. Actually, that was sort of my question, but now I made something up on the spot here. On one of the slides, you had some influences of what horror could be, like you showed Amnesia and Outlast. That kind of progression of horror games turned into a lot of more indie developers. I feel like there was a lot of influence from them. Was there any kind of reaching out or kind of just sharing or collaborating of ideas with those indie developers? So
you're right. We try to play as much as we can a lot of these indie developers, horror, survival action types of titles. But there are not a lot of those in Japan. A lot of the developers that make these games, they're not really physically located in Japan. So it's not as easy for us to have maybe some communication or, meeting up with them and just having casual conversations. So we haven't had the opportunity to really do that.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I've been a big Resident Evil fan for a long time, and I've been very receptive to the different directions that the series has gone in over the last 20 years. However, a lot of people who I respect would say things like, they really miss the action elements of Resident Evil 4 through 6, and I even had one person say that he'd rather RE7 didn't do so well, so you guys could go back to that more action-oriented direction. And
Thank you.
Nakanishi-san, I want to know, what would you say to a person with that kind of mindset, and how do you get them to like the direction you took the game in?
So there was one slide that we or Pete had shown. It says we can't fit this all in one package, and so the meaning behind that obviously is that not all RE games are going to be 100% enjoyed by all RE fans at any time. And as you know, if you've been following the series, there's also, besides the numerical REs, we've had some spin-offs. And so we're not saying that Capcom or our RE team is not going back ever to action-oriented RE games. I think that the simple sort of vision and owning up and committing to that and keeping focus, keeping true to that is what we are trying to say here today for RE7. And I think you guys, can look forward to what we may come up with in the future.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, a little bit more. And we're out of time, so this is going to be last. I also worked on Revelations. So just to give you an example, it's not just the numerical titles that I worked on. So I enjoyed, basically kind of controlling and giving life to Chris and Jill for that. But in this, let's say if we had Leon and then he opens up the pot and there's cockroaches, that's not something that, I don't know if you guys would enjoy that as much. So, there's a certain focus that we just stick to, and that just happens to be what we did for RE7.
Can I ask one last question really quickly?
Okay.
I love the game, and I really liked your art director's idea that you could get sliced in two and then have to crawl to the safe room. Was there anything else that you rejected because it was too disgusting?
Of course we do, but I can't give away all the secrets for our next game, so I won't say.
We might use it.
Thank you.
Thank you.